I'm done with my husband after he lied and risked my life. I, 28 female, have been married to my husband, 32 male, for 3 years. We have a 1-year-old daughter together. Up until recently, I thought I could count on him when I truly needed him. But last week, he proved me completely wrong. I had been feeling off for a couple of days, fatigue, nauseous, and just generally unwell. Then one morning, I woke up with a fever, chills, and a deep sense that something was really wrong. I was so weak, I could barely get out of bed. Taking care of our daughter felt impossible. I called my husband to work and I told him I needed him to come home. He promised he would. An hour passed, then 2. He kept texting me saying he was just finishing up something and would leave soon. Then he claimed he was stuck in traffic. Then he said he was on his way but had to stop for gas. At this point, my fever was getting worse, and I was struggling to even sit up without feeling dizzy. I told him it was urgent. He reassured me he was almost there, but something felt off. So I texted one of his co-workers, someone I knew he was close with. The response I got sent a chill down my spine. He hasn't left yet. He's still here. I was furious and terrified. I immediately called my neighbor, a kind older woman. She came over right away, helped me get dressed, and drove me to the hospital. Turns out, I had a severe asymptomatic urinary tract infection that had turned into a serious kidney infection. My heart rate was dangerously high, and the doctors told me that if I had waited much longer, I could have gone into septic shock. 2 hours later, while I was lying in that hospital bed shaking from the fever and hooked up to N4, my husband finally decided to show up. I didn't even want to look at him. He tried to explain, saying he didn't realize it was that bad and that he was just trying to wrap things up at work. But I can't get over the fact that he lied to me over and over while I was at home struggling to stay conscious. If my neighbor hadn't been there, I don't know what would have happened to me. I feel so betrayed. If he could ignore me in a life-threatening situation, what does that say about our marriage, about our future, about our daughter's safety if something ever happens again? I don't know what to do. Would you be able to trust your partner after something like this? Ope, you are absolutely right to be furious, and it would be very difficult to trust again. He lied nonstop, ignored your pleas, and now he acts like it's not a big deal? He's an idiot, and of course it would make me question everything. So if I was in your shoes, first, I would focus on getting better. Then you have a choice to make. You either call it time of death on the relationship and look after your kid and yourself because he doesn't seem like he's going to. Or 2, you sit him down and demand accountability. He needs to explain without dodging. He doesn't get a free pass. He's got to own it and show he'll change, not just shrug it off if you're willing to give him another chance. Because again, the bottom line is if he can't be trusted, you need to think about your kid and yourself. It's your call if he's worth another shot. But if he keeps brushing it off, you need to protect yourself. And what do you guys think? What kind of advice would you give OP? Let me know in the comments section. And now let's check out the community comments. Stellar Space Jam says, I went through something very similar with a now ex. I tried to get past it, but I just knew in my heart after that he wasn't reliable and wouldn't prioritize me even in the most dire of circumstances. And that's a hard thing to move past even without children. Laconic Strike says, your spouse let you down in a life or death emergency situation. You almost died. He prioritized his work over your life and happily lied to your face while you were literally dying. There's no coming back from this. Okay, 9786 says, yeah, no. I couldn't do this either. If you had waited for him and gone into septic shock and probably ultimately died, what would he have done then? That could have 100% been prevented if he just came home when you asked. He gives more loyalty to a job that'll just replace him when it's his time over his wife who he chooses to love in sickness and in health. Fafalala says, for me, it's not the not taking my illness seriously or sense of urgency that would give me pause. I'm overly dramatic when I get sick. Obviously, that's not what happened with you and glad you were on the mend, but it's the lying for me. He lied so cavalierly so many times and said he was on his way for critical hours and he was still at work. Lying bothers me more than anything because if he can lie about being on the way and make up stopping for gas, then what else is he lying about? Working late? Hanging out with the guys? Trust would be gone after that. And Blonde2468 says, I am so very sorry, OP. Short answer, no. I would never be able to trust my partner after something like this. I mean, what if it was his daughter and for something much worse? Could you or her count on him to be there? Absolutely not. Quote, if my neighbor hadn't been there, I don't know what would have happened to me. End quote. I'll tell you what would have happened. You would have gone into septic shock and possibly died, and your daughter would have been left there all alone with you until he decided to finally wander home at the end of the day. Is that the future you want for your daughter? Additional information from Ops comments. First off, to clarify the way I write, I am French-Canadian who uses translation tools which makes my texts more formal. Sorry about that. Also, my parents live 4 hours away, which is why I didn't ask for their help at first, but they came to pick up my daughter to take care of her for a few days while I got better. Now this is the first time he's done this for something serious, but it's not the first time he's lied about his arrival time home or didn't make me a priority. That's why I asked his colleague. I sometimes ask him when he thinks he'll be home when his usual finishing time has already passed. Sometimes he works overtime without informing me, and I was waiting for him for dinner. Still, he basically told me I should have just gone to the hospital earlier with my neighbor instead of waiting around for him. No apologies. There have already been issues with lies, but not particularly with me. There was a time when he lied a lot to make himself seem more interesting or perceived as the good one in conflict even to his family and friends. We had a serious discussion about it, and it hadn't happened again for at least 2 years. If he had told me he couldn't come, I would have made other arrangements. However, since I rarely ask him for help, I admit I'm very disappointed that he wasn't there for me when it mattered. I'm not the type to ask him for help for no reason or to seek medical attention without a real problem. On the contrary, I waited until I was in pretty bad shape because at first, I thought it was just a simple virus. Again, I had an asymptomatic urinary tract infection. I didn't have the usual burning sensation when urinating, which means the first symptoms I experienced were those of the condition worsening, such as fever, etc., which at first could have been mistaken for a virus. I had no idea it was that. It was only when it quickly started to get worse that I realized something was wrong and asked for his help. However, I don't think the infection is his fault. It's not food poisoning or anything like that. Well, the community answered Ops questions in no uncertain terms, telling her that there is nearly no chance to come back from this. So now let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. I'm feeling better and finally back home after a few days in the hospital. My parents came to pick up my daughter and took care of her while I was away. They live 4 hours away, so I hadn't asked for their help earlier. I didn't really get an apology from him, just a bunch of excuses. He said he didn't think it was that serious, and I should have just gone to the neighbor if it was really that bad. I didn't argue, not because I agree, but because some of the comments I got made me realize some things. People asked me if I'm the type to cry wolf, and that's why he didn't come. In 5 years of being together, I've only ever needed him to take me to the hospital once when I gave birth to our daughter. He wasn't there when I was sick. And if he had come home, he probably wouldn't have done much anyway if I didn't need a hospital. But then someone asked me what I'd do if it was our daughter in my position and he acted the same way. That hit me hard. And as dramatic as it sounds, I don't want to be with him anymore. I don't think I can ever trust him again. I've made an appointment with a lawyer, but, of course, divorce takes time. I'm looking for an apartment, but the housing shortage is a nightmare. Since I live in a rural area, though, there's still hope. I haven't told him yet. He's acting like nothing's wrong, so I'm doing the same. I even saw comments suggesting that he might not have actually been at work, maybe using it as an excuse for something else. So one night while he was sleeping, I checked his phone. I didn't find proof he wasn't at work, but I did find messages to women, multiple flirty ones, and a Tinder app. These messages have been going on for months. He was also sending TikToks to his friends while I was sick, laughing and joking around with no real concern for me. He told me his boss refused to give him time off. I found no evidence that he even asked for time off or discussed my condition with anyone. I'm starting to suspect he lied because if he really did ask, it would have been illegal for his boss to deny him leave where I live. At this point, I don't feel like confronting him. I just want out. I ignored the red flags before, the small lies, broken promises, and I shouldn't have. I thought he'd be there for me when it mattered most, but I guess I was naive. I never thought anyone could let me down like this. I'm not telling him I'm leaving until I'm ready, just like he didn't tell me he wasn't coming. Ope, I think you've made the right choice. Good riddance to that, scumbag. Just focus on yourself and your kid. So on that note, here's wishing you the best in the future, Obi. Thanks so much for sharing and take care. And now let's move on to the next post that also has an update. This post is from the subreddit, Am I the A-hole? And it's by user mode electrical 77776. Am I the a-hole for buying myself a new car and giving my husband my old one? My husband, 37 male, and I, 37 female, are at a standstill. Neither of us are yelling and mad over it, but we just fully disagree and he thinks I'm being in a hole. My husband has been driving the same car since he was 20. It's a very basic model with cracked windows and drives like a go-kart. The last time I drove it, I thought it was going to fall apart on the highway. It's not that he's attached to this car, he just doesn't particularly care. I drove a 2022 hybrid sedan. I bought my car and our house with my own money. He pays 50% of our monthly expenses excluding our kid. I pay for every child-related expense including daycare. We make about the same amount of money, but I came into our marriage with zero debt, a large inheritance, and a very expensive house. It's a normal house. I just live in a place where a detached house is 1 million minimum. My husband is left with, like, $3,000 for personal expenses each month, including half the groceries, maybe a little more than half, but he doesn't save. He jumps from expensive hobby to expensive hobby. I honestly don't care. It really doesn't have an impact on me normally. So the problem, I want to buy an SUV for me to drive as my sedan doesn't fit our 90-pound golden retriever with the car seat, and I want to take him on hikes with our kid, etc. It feels like I'm cheating on my dog when I don't take him. I swear, he smells the nature on me. My husband thinks I'm a hole for buying myself a new car and giving him the old one. I see it as me giving him a $30,000 car that's 20 years newer than the one he drives. He can sell it and buy a different car if he wants, but he can figure that out himself. Curious to hear what other people think. OB, you're definitely not the a-hole. This is just incredibly simple. Your husband's acting like an idiot here. You're not flaunting cash or rubbing it in his face. You're upgrading your right for legitimate reasons. Dog, kids, hikes, the works, and you're basically giving him a car like as you said that's 20 years newer than the one he's currently driving. It's something like beggars can't be choosers and looking a gift horse in the mouth or something like that. What the hell? If he doesn't like it, you can keep the car, you sell it and pocket the money, and he can figure it out for himself. So no, UPI. Not the a-hole. Just ask him, do you want the car or not? Because if you don't want it, I'll sell it and keep the money. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section, and now let's check out the community comments. Dia Zim says, your husband can afford a car on his own. If he wants a car so bad, he could just get a car note. Like, I'm confused. You've been spoiling him and treating him like he's your child. This is the entitlement that has resulted. And Dopey responds, yeah, I honestly take some fault for taking on a majority of the mental load in our lives. I'll just put my foot down on this and let him know that he has until the spring to let me know which car he's keeping, mine or the beater. I want him to drive mine because it's safer for my kid. Otherwise, I wouldn't give him another opportunity. A geeky ninja says, I think you should have had a conversation about this, and I suspect that you guys don't talk about finances as much as you should. I mean, was it a surprise to him that he got your car or something? Because that's a shame to give him a brand newish car that could have been a great trade if he's going to act like he didn't want it. But I wouldn't give a card to anybody without talking to them information. And OP responds, what should we be talking about in regard to finances? That's a serious question. I'm not trying to be snippy. I have our retirement kids' education fund and monthly budget more than handled, and he knows that. He basically doesn't need to worry about it. He fully knows our financial situation. We have a prenup, so it was explained to him through a lawyer. He's actually never asked for money in any way, although I've offered. Alternative Due 1958 says, he sounds like an entitled if he wants a new car. He needs to skip the hobbies for a few months to save for a down payment. And Del Nordo says, so trade your car in and be done with it. He should heed the words, never look a gift horse in the mouth. What? Does he want you to buy him a new car too? What a baby. And OP responds, yeah. He thinks I should buy him an SUV and I can just use it when I want to go hiking. I should just trade my car in. I'd pay less tax. OP's at it. I totally thought I could get by, but English is my third language and apparently personal pronouns can't be used the way I use them. My kid and our kid is the same thing to me. They are both true? I don't know. Just let that go unless you're a polyglot, then chirp away. You deserve it. And just to clarify, he doesn't pay for childcare because I don't ask him to. He would and has offered. I decline. I send her to an expensive private daycare instead of the government run, once our actual income can afford. Just because he doesn't financially contribute to our kid doesn't mean he doesn't contribute. Imagine telling a stay-at-home mom she's a child because she doesn't financially contribute to her kids. He's an active parent, currently feeding her breakfast using baby-led weaning based on his research, and he's loving being able to be more involved with feeding her. He listens to audiobooks about parenting on his commute. So the majority of the community are in agreement that OP is not the a-hole and that the husband just needs to get over it. Now let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. Hi. So for the actual reasonable people who aren't bankrolling divorce attorneys, hello. So my husband came home after a walk with his mom this morning, and the short of it is his mom convinced him the other day that he does so much more than any husband and father when I could easily pay someone to relieve some of his workload and don't. The least I could do is buy him a new car and keep driving mine because he deserves it. He should have more free time, etc., etc., and he just bought into it, which is kind of hilarious to me because I spent all yesterday watching our daughter and 2-year-old nephew so him and my brother could go hiking, a 1 and a 2-year-old. I got my ass handed to me. Anyways, he went for a walk with his mom this morning, and she tried to emotionally blackmail him into giving her $1,500 a month for the rest of her life so she can retire. So, yeah, reality hit him like a truck. He has come to his senses, Set a goal to save $10,000 so that he can upgrade the sedan to an SUV in 6 months, and as agreed, he will reach out to my other sibling for helping increasing his financial literacy. Context: my grandfather made my siblings and I meet and get financial planners with his help before he passed and made sure we knew what to learn, who to trust, and were ready for that responsibility. It took me years to understand how my grandparents had set up my inheritance. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the tax implications of different actions, etc. A majority is not liquid funds, but I do have quite a bit because I was on maternity leave, so it's a good year tax-wise. Lol. I've tried talking my husband and getting him involved, but it stressed him out beyond belief and he got frustrated when he didn't understand. That's kind of why I just managed everything and let him not have to worry about it. It's easier than convincing him to care. It's just not his thing, I guess. It's a good thing he married me. Wikiface. Now we just have the mom problem. Well, Obi, I guess one step at a time. At least your husband took his head out of his ass and now understands what's going on. So here's wishing you both the best in the future.